CZ, I know you've obviously had a uh, very rapid path of growth in the space, having started Binance in I believe, mid 2017. Can you tell us a little bit about what you believe it was about Binance that was different and that led to Binance's dramatic growth?
Sure. I can start. Well, there's some really basic ones, and there's some really detailed ones, and there's some high-level ones. So I think at the middle level, the very basic stuff is we just want to be able to service users. So we want to provide a product that serves users' needs, and we want to provide good customer support for people. So that's really the fundamental part, is we want to build products that people actually use. So in 2017, we look at the market. We felt that there's probably a market for crypto-to-crypto exchange. ICOs were really hot back then. And we got lucky. And at a sort of higher level, mission level, we want to increase the freedom of money. I think that resonates with a lot of our users who think that right now, most of our money is not that free. And there's a lot of restrictions with it. So I think that resonates with a lot of our community. And on the bottom level, on the execution level, we felt that on the product side, many of the existing products before were only web only, no mobile interfaces, English only, no international languages. Customer support takes months to get a response. We said, well, it should take less than 24 hours, ideally in a couple hours. So all of those little things add up. And we're very transparent, we're very open, we're very engaging with the community. We run a more modern organization. So I think all of those little things adds up. And I think the most important factor is we got lucky. So
that's a great point. I think we have to have some humility. Sometimes, yeah, there is a bit of luck involved with many of these things. I think one thing that's really interesting as well with Bitcoin and this, well, some people speak about it in terms of 4-year cycles, right? We have this kind of boom and bust cycle. And what we have historically seen with big exchanges is they obviously have trouble during that crazy sort of bull run time. What was it about Binance that, how did you adapt to that kind of thing in terms of, dealing with customer support tickets and so on to get back to customers quickly? What was Binance doing differently there?
To be honest, we don't have a silver bullet. There's no secret sauce. I think we face the same challenges as everybody else. I think our attitude is like, we want to solve those problems. We recognize it. We admit it. It's just a very challenging problem to solve on many fronts. Like technology-wise, this is the first time where you have exchanges allowing retail customers to connect from anywhere in the world. So you can have really, literally millions of users connecting to your exchange at the same time. Technically, this is very different from the traditional exchange technical architecture. The traditional exchanges, they have like brokers or members, and then typically there's a couple hundred of those guys. And then they have very high-speed systems that takes user orders, and then they submit those orders to the exchange. But the exchange is only dealing with, 400, 500 members, or at max a couple thousand. And all of those members have their servers co-located in their data centers. So this is very different when you move into the internet world with crypto exchanges, where we have guys connecting from Africa, from all over the place. And the network speed is very varied from different places to different places. So that's a technical challenge, which is really difficult to solve. And I think we are ahead in most aspects in this area, but we're not ahead. We're not guaranteed to be ahead all the time. And I think other players in this industry, we copy each other anyway. So other players in this industry are catching up as well. And sometimes they even move ahead of us in some areas. There's a second aspect you mentioned about customer support. That's really hard to scale up because that's still like until you have really good AI customer support, which we don't have to the most extent. We still rely on humans, and that's a really tough one to scale like vertically or exponentially. So we try to optimize it with like better FAQs, better product designs, all of these things that we try to do. But it's a challenge, and we try to ramp up as many people as we can to be able to handle the peaks. So all of these things we try to do. We're nowhere near perfect or even the best, to be honest, in a lot of places. But it's a challenge, but it's a fun thing to do. So we'll try to continue to service our users to the best we can.
Yeah. And I think the other angle that you mentioned is really around monetary freedom. But at the same time, there's a very big level or very high level of regulation around the world and different countries and so on. And I think that's something that you have been perhaps famous for, is kind of moving Binance headquarters around the world. Can you tell us a little bit about what drove that? Was it essentially trying to find the best jurisdiction for Binance to have the headquarters?
Sure. There's a couple interesting ideas I can share there. I think number one is the biggest misconception about Binance comes from people who live in one country. So they view that, okay, look, I live in one country. Sometimes, usually it's a big country. I view most people from smaller countries have less of a single country complex. Whereas guys from very developed countries say, look, I live in X country, and if you're not here, then you're dodging regulation. Well, like we take a world view, which is very different. We take a look at the world, and I'm pretty happy to be living in and operating in any place that accepts us. So it's more that we find countries with progressive and favorable regulations that are pro-crypto, and we want to establish over there. So the countries where they have very strict regulations, then we want to comply, but understand that the regulatory compliance is a very high cost. Applying for licenses, go through the approval process, all of this stuff takes a huge amount of time and energy, and it just opportunity time as well. Typically it takes a year, like half a year to a year to get a license from a regulator. So for startups, some startups start doing that. That's great. That's their strategy. We took a world view. We want to service, and to be honest, they were in the heavily regulated worlds. They have always been. There often are existing players who are already playing there, who are providing services to users there. So we're not really into going there to like compete head-on kind of mentality at the beginning. So that's one thing. The other thing, which is really interesting and tricky, is when we look at the regulations around the world, most people understand or think that the more regulation there is, the stronger the industry will be. But sometimes it works slightly in the opposite directions. When the regulations are good, when the regulations are protecting of the users and also promoting innovation, that's really good. But we've also seen regulations where they're overly strict, and then they kill innovation. And also, not only they kill the startups that want to service this, but the more restrictions we apply on traditional fiat money, the more people want crypto. Right, so the more you try to regulate it, the more people actually want crypto. So that works, and the best way for some regulators who view that crypto is a risk for their users, a better approach may be to relax the regulations in the traditional fiat world, make the freedom of transferring money easier, and make the fees lower, and people will use crypto less. So there's a lot of really contrary ideas that people don't think about. People don't think about the secondary effects, and people think about crypto as one finite thing. And if you regulate this thing, you're done. But in reality, there's many different ways. You can regulate centralized exchanges, but there's decentralized exchanges. There's all this other space that you can't. It's not one finite block. So there's a lot of those misconceptions people don't think about. So we want to work with regulators to help regulate this space in a healthy way, so that we promote growth, both from the regulatory perspective, also from the industry perspective. So we're always very welcoming to regulators who want to work with us. But for the guys who are a little bit tough, or for the guys who we don't have a strong communication channel with, then we leave that country alone. So that's kind of how we operate.